you have Elmo, who makes N sandwiches for a fundraiser. And we're given that for each sandwich, he uses B globs of peanut butter at 4 cents per glob and J blobs of jam at 5 cents per blob. And we're given that the cost of the peanut butter and jam to make all sandwiches is $2.53. And we're given these conditions. We want to know what is the cost of the jam that Elmo uses to make the sandwiches. So this question, right, it's just a pretty like straightforward like word problem. Like the idea, you just got to go step by step. So we have like let's take a look at one sandwich at a time. So we have one sandwich. So one sandwich, you use B globs of peanut butter at 4 cents per glob. So you do 4 times B. That represents like the amount of money for the peanut butter. And then plus 5 times J, because we know each blob of jam costs 5 cents. So we would do 5 times J. So 4B plus 5J represents the total amount of money required to make one sandwich. And since we're given that Elmo is making N sandwiches, to find the total number of sandwiches, we would just take that number, 4B plus 5J, and we would multiply it by N. And we're given that this equals 253 cents. Remember, we're doing all our calculations in terms of cents. So this has to equal 253. And we're given that like N is greater than 1. So the idea is like, this is actually now boils down to a number theory problem. So notice at 253, we can just like play around with the numbers, and we eventually notice 253 can write as 11 times 23. So the idea is like, we can kind of notice, we remember N is greater than 1, right? So we can take a look at these two quantities separately. You have a 4B plus 5J, and you have an N. So we can take a look at these two like quantities separately. So like for the number N, we know N is greater than 1. So that tells us that N, so notice that 1, 11, 23, and 253 are factors of 253, right? Those are the only factors. So we know that N is greater than 1, so N can't be 1. So we must have that N is either 11, 23, or 253. So first, we clearly see N can't be 253, because if N was 253, then that tells us 4B plus 5J has to be 1. But there are no positive integer values of B and J, so that 4B plus 5J is 1. So N can't be 253. Now, if N is 23, so if N is 23, then 4B plus 5J would have to be 11. But you can easily test, you can kind of guess and check. Like you can test, oh, if J equals 1, J equals 2, both of these values do not yield integer values for B. And then you can ignore J equals 3, because when you go to J equals 3, you get a negative value of B. That makes no sense. So this also does not work. So 23 does not work. So that tells us N has to be 11. So if N is 11, we can plug it in. 253 divided by 11, we get 23. So we get that 4B plus 5J has to be 23. And from here, we can kind of like find like a solution. We can kind of do some easy like trial and error. We find J equals 3, B equals 2 satisfies this condition. So the original question wanted us to find like, what is the cost of the jam that Elmo uses to make the sandwiches. So for each sandwich, Elmo uses 5 times J amount of money. And we know J we found was 3. So 5 times J is 15 cents. So Elmo requires 15 cents for each like sandwich in terms of jam. And since he's making 11 sandwiches, you would do 11 times 15 and you get 165 cents. And if you convert that to dollars, you get $1.65. So 1.65. And that would be choice D, which is the right answer.